One of the many reasons why the X-Men have remained such an important staple of comic book culture is because the franchise is filmed to the brim with emotion. The series has always had a lot in common with soap opera drama, with each storyline being emotionally investing to remind readers just how heartbreaking a few vibrant panels can be. When a comic book can hit notes that collide so similarly with real-life situations, it's hard for the content to not strike a chord with readers. The X-Men have done so time and time again ever since the first issue hit the stands in 1963. So, it's time to bust out those tissues, grab your nearest photo and caress it like Wolverine, and get sad. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture Comics, and here are the 10 most heartbreaking X-Men moments in comics history. Number 10, Cypher sacrifices himself to save his friends. For a long time, Doug Ramsey, also known as Cypher, was something of an afterthought in the X-Men. The only power he had to his name was to speak and understand any language known to man, so basically he was a bit useless. Without any powers useful for the fight against evil, he was pretty much a coward in every confrontation. Naturally, when it came to scrap someone off the team, Cypher's name was the first on the chopping block. To everyone's surprise, Ramsey would get a noble death that would make us all fall in love with this nobody character. While on a mission to rescue Birdbrain, Cypher and his girlfriend Wolfsbane get in a fight with Annie Mater. After spending most of the battle in hiding, Doug scurries out of his hiding spot to stop a bullet meant for Wolfsbane. In an instant, the multilingual mutant is shot down and passes away. It was such a heartbreaking moment that even Magneto had to recall it as one of the most traumatic memories he's ever had. Number 9, Wolverine kills his lover. Wolverine rarely finds himself in a relationship in the comic books. When he does, he is usually romantically linked with Mariko Yoshida. When he's not feuding with her father, the Silver Samurai, Logan is in a passionate affair with her. At one point, she nearly walked the normally hard-edged war vet down a path of peace outside of crime fighting. Of course, it was never meant to be. Mariko was later poisoned by Matsuo Tsuruyaba, and Mariko finds herself slowly dying. As the poison flowed through her system in each passing moment, the pain quickly became unbearable for her to stand. She begs her would-be husband to end her life before the disease does, and, against his better judgment, he does just that. When his only shot at true happiness was taken from him, it only made Logan into a deadlier savage than ever before. Number 8, Stryker targets school kids. In the aftermath of M-Day, the X-Men were all suddenly living in a world where the mutant population had dwindled down exponentially. This is because Scarlet Witch wished for no more mutants, and her powers wiped out most of them. Due to this, most of the mutant population had suddenly lost their powers and became human. This dramatically affected the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning, as 155 of the school's enrolled 182 overall students had suddenly become depowered. All of the newly human students were sent home. 111 students were either expelled or voluntarily left. Those 111 students were put on a bus to go home. Unfortunately, Sergeant William Stryker, who at this point had become irreverent, learned of the X-Men's plans. He ordered a missile to strike the bus that was exiting the compound. 42 of the former mutants died in the explosion. Number 7, Moira is killed by Mystique and Sabretooth. Ever since it debuted in the comics, the Legacy virus was a wave of terror that decimated the mutant population. Eventually, the disease took the lives of non-mutants as well. This would include Professor Xavier's longtime love interest, Moira MacTaggert. Her affliction convinced the good doctor to try and find a cure herself. In quarantining herself, she manages to succeed in finding a cure. Before she can have the chance to spread the cure to others, her plans are cut short by Mystique and Sabretooth. The members of the Brotherhood of Mutants attack Moira and, in doing so, leave her in a critical state. Rogue tries to save her by using her powers to absorb Moira's medical knowledge, but it proves to be no use. Xavier's lover passed away on the X-Jet and was buried in her homeland of Scotland. Number 6, Colossus dies to save everyone. Over the course of 8 years, the Legacy virus claimed the lives of some of our audience's favourite characters. Among them was not only Moira, but also Colossus's little sister, Magic. Her death inspired him to sacrifice his own life to destroy the virus once and for all. In hopes of perfecting the cure that Moira left behind, Beast rigorously continued her research. The Blue Furball eventually learns that there is only one way that the cure can work. The cure must be airborne and activated into the atmosphere once a mutant injects the virus virus into their own bloodstream. McCoy wanted to wait for a better solution, but Colossus disagreed. In fact, the Russian strongman is certain the time for waiting is over, so Colossus injects it into himself and sacrifices his life in a moment that's both heartbreaking and noble. Number 5. Kitty Pryde's sacrifice. The X-Men must be living on the bloody Summer Isle from the Wicker Man because they love a good sacrifice. Colossus wasn't the only noble X-Men character to sacrifice his life to save others. His longtime girlfriend, Kitty Pryde, was another. It all started when Shadowcat and the astonishing X-Men were met face to face with a vicious team called Breakworld. The evil team launched a missile to destroy the Earth. Kitty was appointed with the task to stop the missile herself. Pryde decides that the only way to stop the missile is for her to use her powers to phase herself inside of the bullet to stop it from the inside. In attempting to do so, she discovers the missile was empty all along. She later learned the hard way that Breakworld's missile wasn't actually a missile. It was a bullet. Doctor Strange and Marvel's top men tried their best to save her, but it was too late. Shadowcat had died, until she came back a few years later. Oh, come on, don't look at me, it's the X-Men. What else did you expect? Number 4. Wolverine kills the X-Men. The X-Men have run into countless threats that left every single member on the team in jeopardy. Every time, the team managed to make it out of the predicament having suffered minimal damage. Certainly, they were never beaten so badly that it killed off the whole team in question. That is, until old Man Logan hit the shelves. In a flashback, Wolverine sees that the X-Mansion had been infiltrated by several of the team's longtime rivals. Naturally, he completely eviscerates everything in sight. The joke was on him, however, as these weren't actually any enemies at all. Courtesy of a trick from Mysterio, the attackers were actually the X-Men themselves. Having massacred all of his friends and family, Wolverine is left a broken shell of himself. After multiple failed attempts at suicide, including allowing himself to get hit by a train, he secludes himself to a barren wasteland. There, he refused to ever use his claws again. Number 3. Squid Boy dies after learning of Juggernaut's betrayal. Throughout Uncanny X-Men, Squid Boy had become the best of friends with Juggernaut. Big ol' Kane Marco had seen a bit of himself in the young mutant. It was enough to convince Kane to try and become a better person by joining the X-Men. However, as time went on, Squid Boy eventually discovers that the big man had seemingly turned turncoat and joined the Brotherhood of Mutants. Unbeknownst to the Squid, Juggernaut was actually working as a secret spy on behalf of the X-Men. He tried to explain himself, but Squid Boy just wasn't listening. The boy was so devastated that he inadvertently ran straight into a plant creature mutant named Black Tom Cassidy. The attack from Black crushed and distorted Squid Boy's body to death, and it is awful. When the Breaker of the Stone tried to help his friend, Squid Boy used his last dying breath to say, "Leave me alone! Get away from me! I hate you! I don't want you touching me!" The very same words I utter to Jules every time he walks into the studio while I'm recording. No! Piss off! No!
Come here! I need you to wipe my sores!
Number 2, Iceman comes out to his younger self. In issue 40 of All New X-Men, a younger version of Iceman arrives to the present. Not long afterwards, Jean Grey uses her telepathy to read his mind. This is when she discovers that young Bobby is actually gay. This comes as a surprise to her because the modern-day adult version of Iceman had been exclusively dating women. The teenage Iceman confronted his older self on the matter in Uncanny X-Men number 600. To his own shame and hesitation, the older version of Iceman, while being moved to tears, admits to his younger self that he is gay. In fact, he was always gay. Following their conversation, Iceman focused on being open to himself and not turning into his closeted older self. He then received his own comic book series where he works on dealing with his Omega powers and being openly gay, and it was fantastic. Number 1, Cyclops kills Xavier. For all the times that we have seen Xavier die and come back, we should have been numb to it by the time we lost him again in Avengers vs. X-Men. However, this turned out to be one of the most heartbreaking Professor Xavier deaths ever printed, and that's saying something because the guy has died so many damn times. At the time, Cyclops was possessed by the Phoenix Force. After the entity had possessed a slew of other characters simultaneously, Cyclops started leading them as the Phoenix Force 5. When Professor X tried to get through to his former student, it proved to be of no avail. Cyclops then became the Dark Phoenix and killed Xavier in an instant. The pupil and key leader of the X-Men had murdered the team's founder. It would be poetic if it wasn't so darn heart-wrenching. And that was our list. What X-Men moment broke your heart to smithereens? Please let us know down in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. I've been Ewan. Catch me in the wild on Twitter at EwanRuinsThings, and I'll see you next time. Bye!